I'd like to go into the current events. Lots of things are happening, have been happening. The lead article actually is titled, US No Longer Reliable Ally. It was written by Politico. Again, a few highlights. It's putting the spotlight on France, the EU's only nuclear power, and a country with independent weapons makers. It has long warned that the continent should become more autonomous in areas such as technology and defense. The way France and Germany, the EU's largest countries, respond in the coming months and years will determine whether other European countries will turn to them for Europe's defense, which we know they will. And all the prophecies which we have been proclaiming to you over the years are becoming more and more obviously true. Not that we ever doubted them to be true, but many people question them, have questioned them, don't understand prophecy anymore. A little later in this article it says, European capitals now realize France might have been right all along. In other words, the clues of Washington's disagreement and disengagement from, if not disdain of Europe, have now been hard to ignore, and influential German voices are no longer looking at Washington as an ally. And then there are more articles about the situation, the relationship between Germany and Europe on the one hand, the United States on the other. You probably heard about the fact that there have been visa bans proclaimed against Germans and French and British citizens, so they're not allowed to come here any longer, certain ones. Of course, in all fairness, they are left-wing people, but nevertheless, Europe is extremely upset about this, and Macron condemned the visa ban in furious terms. And the former French finance minister says, this is now McCarthy's witch hunt all over again, and on it goes. We have another article in there about Denmark. Denmark fumes over new US envoy to Greenland. Now, some have asked recently, well, what is the story with Greenland? Trump had said Greenland should become part of the United States. Then we haven't heard about this for a while, but the idea is most certainly not dead. It says here by Deutsche Welle, Denmark is incensed at the appointment of Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry as new US Special Envoy to Greenland, as President Trump continues to heap pressure on the Nordic nation and looks to take over the territory from Copenhagen. And then in this light, Landry took to the social media platform X to thank Trump for the appointment, writing, "It is an honor to serve you in this volunteer position to make Greenland a part of the United States." And so that, of course, wasn't to the liking of Denmark and Sweden, for that matter, and of course Greenland, and so they all are very upset with Trump and his administration. Now, we have several articles in there about Russia, and here is the US Director of National Intelligence, Mrs. Gabbard. We'll talk about her a little bit later on today. And she made some interesting comments on X, saying that Russia's aim is to, or it does not want to have anything to do with taking over Ukraine, and Russia wants to avoid a larger war with NATO. And of course, if you have followed the news, you know how nonsensical these statements are, but that's what she is saying, because she says, oh, you know, agencies like Reuters are trying to sabotage Donald Trump. But when it comes to the peace treaty he wants to establish, by the way, he and Zelensky are meeting tomorrow, and Trump was asked, so what's the story there? And he said, well, Zelensky has nothing unless I agree to it and unless I give it to him. And so the word is they have agreed. In other words, Zelensky and US have agreed. Now they want to present it to Russia. I can tell you right now, nothing is going to come out of that one either. So it's another total waste of time. There's another article by the Ron Paul Institute entitled Battered America. And this talks about, very interestingly, situations in Israel. And the article says that early in December, the US Embassy in Jerusalem co-sponsored with the Israeli government a gathering of 1,000 evangelical pastors from the United States. And it says a trip to Israel was paid for by the Israeli government. Fox News host Mark Levine, however you pronounce that, hailed President Trump as the first Jewish president. The article says, interestingly, Levine or Levin aside, it has been plausibly asserted that Trump is indeed the first Jewish president, having converted to Judaism in 2017. I've never heard that before. I don't know how true that is, but here's the interesting part. Also at the Tuesday reception, Israeli Las Vegas casino magnate and top political donor Miriam Adelson publicly and openly declared that Trump could pursue a third term as president. She also pledged an additional $250 million in campaign support to fund such an initiative, prompting audience chants of 4 more years. And Trump praised Adelson's backing. Now, I found interesting the arrival of 10,000 ministers, pastors in Israel. What do you think they're there for? What is their goal? Think in terms of the concept that a third temple is going to be built, has to be built in Jerusalem. And somebody just sent me an article this morning. It's a little bit older. It's from August 25, by the Jerusalem Post. But listen carefully what it says. Against the backdrop of the change in policy on the Temple Mount, Finance Minister Smotrich spoke to thousands of participants at a conference marking the anniversary of Rabbi Kook's passing on Sunday. Smotrich spoke twice during the event, which took place at the Jerusalem International Convention Center. His first speech in the afternoon addressed the ongoing war. When Smotrich took the stage for a second time in front of the thousands of people present, Smotrich smiled at Jerusalem Mayor Moshe Leon and said, "I will give the money, you will build the temple." The crowd burst into laughter, and sources were told it was a joke, but in response, Leon replied, "You are the best finance minister Jerusalem has ever had." And the article goes on into more detail, but the question is, was it really a joke? Why would he make a joke like that if there is really no intention to build a third temple? More and more people are talking about it, even in Jerusalem. Here in the United States, there's still those, even in the Church of God, who question that, don't quite understand prophecies, I believe, and don't see the absolute need for the building of the third temple. It is a requirement. Otherwise, Christ could not come back. Very interesting. Going back to our update, well, there's more we could go into. I mean, in developments over there in Germany with Jens Spahn and speculations that he could become the next chancellor, and of course, Mr. Friedrich Merz, who has a completely, totally terrible disapproval rate over there, being looked upon as one of the worst, if not the worst, chancellor Germany's ever had. So in any event, there's all kinds of stuff in there you might want to read to see what is going on in the world, because if you go to Fox News or Newsmax or CNN or ABC, MSNBC, whatever, you're not going to get the news. I can guarantee you that for sure.